The clock on my dashboard glowed 2:17 a.m. I'd been driving for hours, lost in the suffocating darkness of the Pacific Northwest backroads. My GPS rerouted me onto a narrow, winding road swallowed by ancient pines. The trees pressed in, their branches clawing at the edges of my headlights. Exhaustion blurred my vision, but stopping here felt more dangerous than pushing on. The silence was absolute, broken only by the hum of the engine and the static of a dead radio. Every shadow seemed to move, every sound outside a threat. I tried to laugh it off, but the fear was real, primal. The road ahead was as black as the one behind. I was trapped between exhaustion and the unknown. Desperation set in as I searched for a safe place to pull over. The road stretched endlessly ahead, flanked by dense trees that seemed to close in tighter with every passing mile. My eyelids grew heavier, and the hum of the engine became a lullaby I had to resist. I knew I couldn't keep driving much longer. Fatigue was making every decision feel urgent, every shadow more menacing. Every turnout felt exposed, every shadow a threat. I slowed at each empty pullout, scanning for signs of safety. But the isolation only heightened my anxiety. The moonlight cast long, shifting shadows that danced across the pavement, making the world outside my windshield feel both beautiful and sinister. My mind conjured shapes in the darkness, phantoms born of fatigue and fear. The trees seemed to move, their branches twisting into figures that watched from the edge of the forest. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, heart pounding as I tried to remind myself it was just exhaustion playing tricks on me. Finally, I spotted an overgrown access road nearly hidden by the forest. It looked abandoned, the entrance choked with weeds and low-hanging branches. But desperation overruled caution. I slowed, turned in, and let the car crawl forward, branches scraping the car, and parked deep in the brush, out of sight from the main road. I turned off the engine and sat in the sudden silence, heart still racing. The darkness here was thicker, almost tangible, pressing in from all sides. I locked the doors, trying to convince myself I was safe, but the feeling of being watched only grew. I locked the doors, trying to convince myself I was safe, but the feeling of being watched only grew. Every instinct screamed that I was vulnerable, hidden but not truly protected. I checked the back seat, the windows, and the locks again, searching for reassurance that never came. Reclining my seat, I pulled my jacket over me and tried to sleep. The fabric offered little comfort against the chill that crept in, both from the night air and my own nerves. I closed my eyes, but my mind refused to quiet. Every sound outside, the creak of a branch, the rustle of leaves, kept me on edge. The wind made the trees groan and sway, and every unfamiliar noise sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. I tried to focus on my breathing, counting each inhale and exhale, but the tension in my body wouldn't let go. I played ambient music to drown out the night, but it only made things worse. The soft melodies seemed to echo in the emptiness, amplifying my sense of isolation. The music became a soundtrack to my unease, each note a reminder of how alone I truly was. The dread was suffocating. My thoughts spiraled, imagining every possible danger lurking just beyond the glass. I wondered if I'd made a mistake, if I should have kept driving, if I'd ever feel safe enough to close my eyes. Sleep felt impossible. My body ached for rest, but my mind refused to surrender. I stared at the ceiling, listening to my own heartbeat, waiting for exhaustion to finally win. I was alone, surrounded by darkness. The world outside was silent and vast, and I was just a small, frightened presence in the middle of it all, hoping for morning to come. Exhaustion finally dragged me into a shallow, restless sleep. My body ached from hours of tension, and my mind was frayed, teetering on the edge of consciousness. The darkness outside pressed in on the car, making the small space feel even more claustrophobic. I tried to convince myself I was safe, but every creak and groan of the cooling engine made me flinch. My dreams were twisted, trees with arms tapping on the glass, the road looping endlessly. Shadows danced just beyond the headlights, and the forest seemed alive, whispering secrets I couldn't quite understand. I saw faces in the bark, eyes glinting in the darkness, and heard the wind carry voices that sounded almost human. The sense of being watched was overwhelming even in sleep. I woke with a start to a sharp, rhythmic sound, scrape, scrape, scratch. My heart hammered in my chest as I tried to orient myself, the remnants of my nightmare clinging to me like cobwebs. For a moment I wasn't sure if I was still dreaming. It came from the passenger side, deliberate and slow. Each scrape seemed to echo in the silence, impossibly loud in the stillness of the night. I strained to see through the fogged glass, but the darkness outside was impenetrable. No wind, no random branch, just that methodical scraping. It was too precise, too intentional to be anything natural. My breath caught in my throat as I realized whatever was out there knew exactly where I was. My heart pounded as I lay frozen, listening. Every muscle in my body tensed, ready to flee, but I couldn't move. I was trapped between the urge to hide and the need to know what was out there. It sounded like fingernails or something harder, dragging along the metal. The noise was sickening, a slow, deliberate reminder that I was not alone. Each scratch seemed to vibrate through the car, rattling my nerves. I was paralyzed, every instinct screaming to move, but I couldn't. My mind raced with possibilities, animal, person, or something else entirely. I felt utterly powerless, pinned in place by fear. The scraping moved toward the back of the car, patient and unhurried. It circled the vehicle as if inspecting, searching for a way in. I could almost sense its presence, cold and calculating just beyond the thin barrier of glass and metal. The car felt suddenly fragile, no longer a safe haven. The forest outside pressed closer, the trees looming like silent sentinels. I realized how alone I truly was, surrounded by darkness and uncertainty. I was trapped, utterly at the mercy of whatever was out there. The fear was suffocating. I waited, barely breathing, every second stretching into eternity as I listened for the next sound, hoping it would stop, but dreading what might come next. The scraping stopped, replaced by a silence so heavy it pressed in on me. I strained to see through the blackness, my imagination conjuring horrors in the void. Then, a soft thump against the rear windshield. It was behind me now, circling. I squeezed my eyes shut, paralyzed by fear. The keys were in the ignition, but I couldn't move. The silence deepened, the forest holding its breath. I waited, every second stretching into eternity. The feeling of being watched was overwhelming. Whatever was out there hadn't left. It was waiting. Desperation finally broke my paralysis. I slowly lifted my head, peering out the rear windshield. At first, nothing, just darkness. Then, a flicker of movement, a tall, thin shape, motionless among the trees. No features, just a human-shaped void. As I stared, it darted away, unnaturally fast, silent, vanishing into the forest. Adrenaline surged. I fumbled for the keys and started the engine. Headlights blazed, cutting through the black. I slammed the car into reverse, tires spinning, and shot back onto the main road. I didn't look back. I just drove, heart pounding, desperate to escape. The forest swallowed the figure, and my fear, behind me. I sped down the winding road, terror fueling every mile. The image of that figure haunted me, burned into my mind. As adrenaline faded, exhaustion crept back in. I tried to rationalize, maybe it was a hunter, a lost hiker, but the explanations felt hollow. Then, my headlights caught another car on the shoulder, door hanging open, no lights, no one inside. I slowed, instincts torn between concern and dread. The scene felt wrong, abandoned, ominous. Why would someone leave their car like that in the dead of night? I felt like I'd stumbled into a horror movie. I pressed on, refusing to stop. I accelerated past the empty car, every instinct screaming at me to keep moving. The sight of that vehicle, sitting alone in the darkness with no one inside, sent a jolt of fear through me. My hands tightened on the steering wheel, knuckles white, as I tried to convince myself it was just a breakdown, nothing more. But the silence of the forest pressed in, heavy and unnatural, making every shadow seem alive. Suddenly, a shout from the woods. A man's voice, desperate. "Hey! Wait! Stop!" The words echoed through the trees, sharp and urgent, slicing through the quiet night. My heart pounded in my chest as I glanced in the rearview mirror, searching for the source of the cry. It was the kind of voice that made you want to help, but also made you want to run. He burst from the trees, waving his arms, terror etched on his face. His movements were frantic, stumbling over roots and branches as if he'd been running for his life. The desperation in his eyes was unmistakable, and for a moment I wondered if I should stop, if he needed help. But something about the way he looked over his shoulder, as if expecting something to leap from the darkness, made me hesitate. Was he the driver? Was he running from something, or to me? The questions raced through my mind, each one more unsettling than the last. The empty car, the frantic man, the isolated road, none of it made sense. I felt trapped between fear and curiosity, unsure whether to trust my instincts or my conscience. For a split second, our eyes met in the mirror. His look was pure horror, not at me, but at something behind him. It was as if he was pleading with me, not just for help but for escape. The terror in his gaze was so raw, so real, that it sent a chill down my spine. I realized then that whatever he was running from, it was still out there, hidden in the darkness. Was he warning me, or begging not to be left alone? The uncertainty gnawed at me, making it hard to breathe. I could feel his desperation, his fear, as if it were my own. The night air felt colder, heavier, as if the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what I would do. The thought chilled me to the bone. I gripped the wheel tighter, my mind racing with possibilities. Was there something lurking in the woods, something neither of us could see? Every instinct screamed at me to get away, to put as much distance as possible between myself and whatever horror had driven that man to the edge of terror. I floored the accelerator, leaving him behind, his figure shrinking in my taillights. I didn't look back. The urge to escape was overwhelming, stronger than any sense of guilt or responsibility. As the distance grew, I could still hear his voice echoing in my mind, a haunting reminder of the fear I'd witnessed. The image of his terrified face burned into my memory. No matter how far I drove, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd left something important behind, something I might never understand. His eyes, wide with terror, haunted me long after the road had swallowed him up. I drove on, shaken to my core. The night felt endless, the road stretching out before me like a tunnel with no exit. Every shadow seemed to move, every sound made me jump. I knew I would never forget that night, or the man I left behind in the darkness. I didn't stop until sunrise. The forest softened in daylight, but the dread lingered. At a gas station, I saw deep, parallel scratches along my car, deliberate, not from branches. The evidence was undeniable. I never reported it. What could I say? The memory is etched into my mind as deeply as those marks in the paint. I think about the figure, the empty car, the man running for help or warning. Was he a victim or bait? I'll never know, and that's the scariest part. The fear never left me. Now, every late-night drive is haunted by that night. The unknown is always waiting. This isn't just a scary story. It's a warning. We trust our cars, our technology, but the darkness hides things we can't understand. The monsters aren't gone, they're just waiting on the lonely roads and in the deep woods. If you're ever tempted to pull over and sleep on a deserted road, don't. Keep driving, find light, find people. The risk of falling asleep at the wheel is real, but there are worse things in the dark. I still have the car, the scratches a permanent reminder. I was lucky. I got away. The man on the road? I don't know his fate. Learn from my terror. Some places are best left undisturbed. Don't ever sleep on a deserted road. Stay in the light.